We are back. Welcome to week 8. It is Saving Thursday for Bet Victor in Calgary. My name is Ryan Pinder. Out on the left coast, Tyson Cole in the laboratory cooking up prop bets. Producer Jack is with us as well, and we'll check in with our boy Gilles Gallant on the East Coast for some anytime touchdown bets. It is all about the Thursday nighter. It is the Rams hosting the Vikings, and it is a story of two very different divisions that we'll get into later. We've had a nice little run here last week. I don't know, Tyson. That looked like an interception off Spencer Rattler to me. They called it a fumble. What's going on here, Vegas?
It didn't even hit the ground. How can it be a fumble? It looked like his arm was going forward.
Was not wobbling.
I don't know. We got pretty unlucky last week, especially with Vele too. He had one catch for 20 yards and then another catch for 14 yards negated due to a penalty. And then later in the game, he had a 13-yard catch, which would have cashed the over. But again, it was negated to another penalty. So it was pretty rough. But I mean, hey, Broncos -2.5, first spread bet of the season. And that comes through, obviously, it's the Broncos.
1 for 3, so close to 3 for 3, as you noted, with the questionable penalties on the other side of the field, washing out the Vele over. And yeah, that's an interception. I don't know. Now you're obviously a sharp. You're big, a monster gambler. Like, you're moving lines, all kinds of stuff. I'm sure. Like, can you put a call into the league officials and get that to go the other way next time? Because clearly, someone that didn't have the over half an interception exposure, they got that call in before you last week.
Yeah, I mean, I did my best. I gave them a call. The phone lines were so busy. I couldn't get through till Friday morning. And by that time, it was just too late. So I apologize to everybody about that, but I'll be quicker next time.
We are excited about today's game. Let's get some league notes, travel around the 32-team circuit before we hone in on tonight's opener for week 8. No buys this week, by the way, which is kind of fun. I don't know why.
Kind of weird.
6 teams buys, 2 teams buys, no teams buys, 4 teams buys. Okay, yeah, we'll watch it. Just don't know the rhyme or reason, but away we go.
It's right in the middle of the season. Wouldn't you figure that this is the perfect time to get some teams a bye week? You know, why have bye weeks in like week 12 and 14 when the season's almost over? Why not in the middle of the season? It's kind of confusing.
Some of it makes sense. Like the first few weeks of the year, you don't want bye weeks there. The last few, that's too close to playoffs. That'd be advantageous. American Thanksgiving, well, we're going to play 3 on Thursday, so we don't want to have a diluted Sunday, so we don't want any buys there. But otherwise, I feel like they're just in one of these office chairs spinning around, throwing darts, and wherever it lands, okay, we'll do that.
Hey, we can do that.
Yeah, we'll do 2 Monday nighters this week. Whatever. Right? It's the NFL. We touch turns to gold. Midas touch, baby. This is crazy. The Kansas City Chiefs, I don't know if they're good, and yet they're great. It's a weird conundrum, and producer Jack will show us the data, but 6-0 and undefeated, and yet Patrick Mahomes, statistically, probably the worst half season he's had of his career, hasn't lost, and yet more interceptions than touchdowns. What is going on here, Tyson?
It doesn't make any sense to me. This is the worst Patrick Mahomes season we've seen thus far, and it started off pretty good. Him and Rashee Rice had this great connection,
right?
But it's just confusing, and especially with them losing Pacheco, you'd figure, okay, now we got to really rely on the arm of Mahomes. But no, they haven't had to do that. It's been Kareem Hunt who stepped in, and I think their run game is just really good, and that's what's carrying them so far. And their defense. They do have one of the youngest defenses, but that's why it's so good. So
last year's Super Bowl for me was about the maturation of that young defense. Because it's been a couple of years now. They haven't been that dynamic offense. Week 1, I was saying this is going to be elite offense again. It's absolutely not. Now, they've got some excuses, at least this year, with significant injuries that you alluded to. But it's really a team that's good at managing timeouts, killing the clock, not necessarily, playing loose and trading scoring chances. And, playing some really good D. But they get a new weapon. And so we can, again, shout for more hope for the Chiefs offense. But I don't know. What do you make of DeAndre Hopkins heading to Kansas City to join that offense?
Well, I'm just wondering when he's going to break down, because he's old, and that just seems to be what's happening to these Chiefs wide receivers. Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster after he had a good game. I don't know. I'm excited for D-Hop. I'm excited for D-Hop. Like, we haven't really seen him, be vintage D-Hop. That comes with age, obviously. But look at who he was receiving passes from: Will Levis, Mason Rudolph. Like, not necessarily the highest end talent there. But now you get Patrick Mahomes, who, while his stats aren't great this year, he's still obviously one of the best throwers in the entire league. So hopefully D-Hop can kind of assume that role. My question is, does he play on the outside or does he play in the slot? Because Rashee Rice and Juju really work that slot so well and be the number one option in the offense. So is that where they decide to put D-Hop, or do they put him on the outside?
Yeah, okay. So that'll be something to follow. We've had some debuts with some sort of mixed bags. Devontae Adams was with the Jets very early in the week. Wasn't great. I think 30 yards in the first half, nothing in the second. Meanwhile, Amari Cooper got to Buffalo quite late. He drove from Cleveland. And on a play where he didn't even know, because they audibled a lot of scrimmage, where to go, he scored a touchdown. It was quite involved in terms of targets for the small amount of snaps he was actually in on. It is always curious to see how long it takes a guy to get integrated. And it's not like it's one of these old Chiefs coming back, like Hunt, like Juju, like McCole Hardman, because the Chiefs have done that better than anyone. This guy was in our system a couple of years ago. Bring him back, plug him in, he'll make plays.
Yeah, he'll score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. That seems to be what happens every time. I mean, D-Hop's a veteran. Like he's been around everything. They're gonna find ways to scheme him open. He's gonna create that separation like he has throughout his entire career. Like, I'm not too worried. Maybe it'll take a week or two, but I think he'll fit in swimmingly.
Lots of quarterback talk. We'll stick with it. The Carolina Panthers are going back to Bryce Young. This was not the plan, because the plan was not for Andy Dalton to get in a car accident, but he did. It sounds like he's fine. That said, he's missed some practices. Why not go back to Bryce Young? I'd like to see it work. I feel for the guy. First overall pick. CJ Stroud stolen the show. Ugly start. Benched after 2 weeks, 2 absolute blowout losses. And they kind of got a little bit of traction under Dalton, winning a game and looking a little more stable offensively. But am I alone wanting it to work for Bryce Young here?
No, of course not. Because we've seen what Andy Dalton is. He's a veteran in this league now. His upside's very limited. But Bryce Young, while he hasn't looked great, he still has that potential in him. He was the number 1 overall pick 2 years ago. So he's got that in him, but he hasn't been able to put it together. I don't know how well he's going to do this week, because he's against the Broncos, which are great defense so far this year. And so as a fan, I'm kind of excited to see Bryce Young and see what the Broncos D can do to him. But you got to feel for Andy Dalton. It's scary that he got in that car accident, but he seems like he's fine. I heard that he sprained his thumb. That's why he's not playing. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
sprained his thumb in that car crash, which, if you're going to get in a car crash and you walk away with just a
sprained thumb,
that's a W. You're laughing, right? So, yeah. We'll see how long it lasts. I don't believe that it's not, Bryce Young has earned this start because Andy Dalton's looked bad. It's a little bit of an injury. So we'll see how this goes.
Miami could be back because they have a quarterback change as well. And this one is sort of the more upbeat side, I suppose, as Tyreek Hill and many others around the Dolphins are suggesting. Tua's going to be back, baby. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it after. It was the Thursday nighter, I think, against Buffalo, where he took that hellacious hit and obviously sustained a significant concussion. It's not up to us to tell Tua what to do. And he's 26 and he loves football, and he probably isn't ready to say, that's it, I'm going to call it a career. If he was 36, he might do exactly that. Let's hope that he's healthy, but it sounds like we're getting Tua back.
Yeah, fire everybody up in this Miami Dolphins offense. It's good, right, especially against this Arizona Cardinals defense, which hasn't been great. They did pretty good at holding back your Chargers last week. I don't think they scored a touchdown. Was that correct? Sure didn't.
No, despite 300 plus yards from Herbert, which is unheard of this year.
Which is wild. But yeah, I'm just excited. We're gonna see some deep balls to Tyreek. Jalen Waddle's going to get involved again. And those guys were literally unstartable in fantasy. Like, you could just blind bet their receiving yard under, even when it was as low as in the 40s for Tyreek Hill, just because you knew they couldn't push the ball down the field like they can with Tua. So I think for an NFL fan, it's going to be so much better to see what this Miami Dolphins defense can do with Tua and offense.
Here's Tyreek. He's not disappointed at all. He seems happy.
We're back, baby. Strike up the fucking band. We're back, baby. Start me this week, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, sorry, Snoop Huntley, but no, but
Pro Bowler.
It's not. That's right. It's not just the wide receivers. Like that whole offense is just built on speed, and really everyone scared S-less that they're going to get downfield behind us. Waddle and Tyreek, all the speed, and if you can't get the ball to those guys, well, now you can load a box against the run. So it's Mostert, it's Achane, it's the tight end, it's the wide receiver. Like everything about that offense is built around speed. And when that quarterback change occurs, they can't play it with pace, and they were easy to defend. So if Tua looks anything like the Tua we've seen the last 2 years in this offense, they are striking up the bleeping band again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen Tua in practice, and he looks like vintage Tua. So I'm not necessarily worried. And they wouldn't throw him out there if he's not ready. I believe 2 weeks after his concussion, they were already saying, okay, like Tua, he's kind of back. Like he's feeling okay and everything. We're going to side on their caution and kind of wait this out a little bit longer. And so now he's going to be fully ramped up. But when you don't have that, because Snoop Huntley can't deep ball it like Tua can. He can't throw the ball deep. So all they could really do is set up the screen game to Tyreek Hill or Jaden Waddle, but that's so predictable because that's coming. They kind of have to get the ball in their hands, but that's the only way that they can do it. So that's why it didn't really work out. So Tua being back as Tyreek Hill, you got to listen to the man. You got to start him.
Yeah, geez. Playing fantasy. There's some draft capital. You've been waiting for this.
Yep.
Dying to get back.
And his line is back up to 82.5. So, I mean, the books are anticipating
Books expecting it, no doubt. One of the things we've been hammering on is how bad Deshaun Watson's been on the field. Because, lawsuits settled off the field, the touchdowns on the field. Off the field, we know hasn't been good. On the field's been a disaster.
Crazy.
Jameis Winston's been named their starter this Sunday. I believe Browns get the Ravens, producer Jack. Is that right? Yeah. So a divisional game. Last year, you thought when Deshaun got hurt, this team was dead in the water. And instead, under Joe Flacco, they've had a massive resurgence. And you're like, shoot, like Flacco, A, can still do this. And B, when that defense got to have more than 30 seconds before having to run back out on the field, a lot of game changers there. Are we expecting something similar with Jameis Winston, or is this whole deeper or different than last year's that Joe Flacco dug them out of?
I mean, it definitely is deeper. And I don't know if Jameis is going to be able to do the same thing that Flacco did, but he's the same type of player. I mean, when Joe Flacco came in, he was airing it out, not a care in the world. And that's exactly what Jameis does. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think everybody is. I mean, David Njoku had a resurgence. He was the best receiving option that the Browns had last season when it was Flacco. And now putting another gunslinger in like Winston, I'm excited for Njoku for sure.
We already saw it with Njoku. I think he eclipsed 100 yards last week and a ton of targets. Like there it is again. Like there's just too many similarities for me to not bring up Flacco because they just looked so different. And to be fair, like we told you 2 weeks ago, through 5 weeks, it was the most inept quarterbacking like in decades in the NFL. And it happened against the easiest pass defense for a quarterback to face in the schedule, like schedule 1 out of 32 favoring quarterbacks for Deshaun. That's how bad it was. I don't think it's a stretch at all to think everyone's anticipating, that Jameis's floor is higher than what you got from Deshaun Watson. So I
for sure.
I'm excited about the Cleveland offense, although it feels like it's a week too late for Amari Cooper, but he's got a good quarterback where he is now.
Yeah, I don't think Amari Cooper's too worried. But another thing that kind of goes in hand with Jameis Winston, the Ravens on my sheet, they are the worst against quarterbacks. They allow the most passing yards. They allow the second most receiving yards to tight end. So I'm firing up Njoku this week for some props, but we'll get to Saving Sunday later.
Good. I like that. We'll wait for that. That's good. Bad news on the Monday nighter. It was the doubleheader. In one game, it was explosive offense and a lot of fun early. That was Tampa Bay against Baltimore. The other one was a snooze fest. You referenced it. It was Arizona against the Chargers. We did see something I want to ask you about. Tampa Bay's down a lot. Like I want to say 17-ish points. They score, they recover an onside kick, score. And it's like, okay, well, let me reframe this. Down by a lot after already recovering one onside kick. They left their playmakers in late. Last 2 minutes of a game, needing more miracles just to make it relevant and assuming they could just get the ball back, be it in the form of an onside kick, again recovered, or making a play against Baltimore, who was sensational. Chris Godwin's season likely over as a result of an injury during that. Should they have had him on the field? Should they have been pass crazy down 10 points in the late stages against a very good Baltimore team?
That is such a head scratcher. Like, what are you doing? You're down 10 points. You're not even across the 50 yet. I think the pass to Godwin got them over the 50. But what are you doing? Like, you already lost Mike Evans, who was hobbled with a hamstring injury coming into that game. Then he gets hurt again and leaves, and now he's going to be out 3 or 4 weeks. Like, you knew the severity of the injury because he was pretty much ruled out right away before they even got the next offensive snap. So why are you – it's a 2-score game. You have no timeouts. It's a minute left. You just crossed the 50. What are you doing putting Godwin in there? You have young guys. You have Sterling Shepard. You don't need to put Godwin in there, especially when he's been one of the best receivers in the entire NFL.
Monster.
So up to that point. Why are you doing that? You're not going to win the game anyway. And now they paid the price for that silly decision.
Yeah. And it was a tough one because it was just a day earlier that we saw an unfortunate injury to Brandon Ayuk, who's probably done for the year. And I don't like the moral of the story to be like a hold-in or contract squabbles, but Brandon Ayuk got paid because he was the squeaky wheel. Mm-hmm. And now that he's injured, he's going to be okay. Chris Godwin's not the same age. It's not the same contractual spot that he's in, but he's now heading into free agency coming off a season-ending injury, potentially. I know guys get some grief when they do the hold-ins or the holdouts or I want to renegotiate this thing that I signed. But you can see why, in hindsight, for Ayuk, can you imagine him not have doing that? Like how much money he would have left on the table here, and what the situation Godwin's walking into now, which is potentially being a free agent coming off a season-ending injury. That's not good for business.
It's terrible. You feel for the player. I'm happy that Ayuk was able to secure the bag and everything before this injury. But I mean, like you said, Godwin isn't in that same boat. He's a free agent. Who knows if he even comes back to Tampa Bay? Might have been his last snap. But I mean, I'm not too worried about it. Like, I feel his start of the season was so good that, he's still going to be able to earn a contract elsewhere in free agency, no matter where he goes. So don't feel, I feel bad for him because, I mean, did you see his feet?
That foot's not supposed to go that way.
I know, it was weird. It was gross.
It was weird. I wasn't even looking at it. I'm like, oh, no. It wasn't a zoom in, but I'm just like, something in your brain is like, that is not what's supposed to happen. Like, something in that does not fit. Like, there's a puzzle piece in the wrong spot. Oh, it's the foot. And they literally didn't even show the replay. They're like, we're not going to show you this.
Yeah.
Which is all of a sudden a huge change of heart because no one loves slow motion replays of injuries like NFL broadcasts in the last 20 years. I feel like in the last 2 or 3, it's been like, okay, maybe we don't go the slow-mo where you can see ligaments snapping. I mean, although they did give us the Deshaun Watson one 20 times. Yeah. Ping! Someone's plucking a guitar string.
Yeah, you saw that. Oh, it was yeah, I mean, you feel for Godwin for sure. I mean, they're investigating that hip drop tackle because that's what they're saying that it was. And I mean, that's a scary type of tackle because it leads to so many injuries. And that's exactly what happened with Godwin.
That's why they banned it. Yeah. So those are some of the big storylines around the league. Many more featuring tonight's game. We'll get into those now. And we've got some weekend games we're salivating for. We'll tell you about at the end of the program. Let's get right into it. It's the Vikings at the Rams. Vikings, nearly perfect. Their only blemish on the season, last week's loss, 31-29 to Detroit. I believe a last-second field goal, the difference between those two divisional rivals. Meanwhile, the Rams, I thought they were going to lose to the Raiders. It was the Raiders' incompetence That was the only reason they didn't win that game. The Rams kept giving them the ball back and not getting anything done. But it's a suddenly healthy Rams club that might have both Cooper Kupp, who we know will play, and Puka Nacua, who there's some optimism around. Now, Jack, we'll get the full injury report in a moment, but what's the latest?
Puka is active.
Puka is active, so he's in tonight. The question will be the workload.
Yeah.
And that's huge because I look at a team that's 5-1 and has a stout defense in Minnesota, and a Rams team that just hasn't looked good at 2-4, almost out of it. But all of a sudden, you're getting two weapons back. Puka was injured in week 1, Tyson, and it was week 2 that Cooper Kupp left. That's a huge, huge piece of Matt Stafford's your quarterback to get these two, one of the greatest rookie receiving seasons we've seen in the NFL last year from Puka. Kupp and Stafford's been one of the more dynamic connections, quarterback to wide receiver in the league since it's been established, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Now we look and it's like, oh, shoot, Minnesota's actually not great against the pass. And what looked like a lopsided game on paper maybe 10 days ago, we might have a great one here. Like, this could be a classic. This is all of a sudden, playing the matchups really allows a 2-4 Rams team to be only down, giving +2.5 here now, +3.
Yeah, I mean, I did not know that Nacua was in. That changes a lot.
Sure does.
Heading into tonight. I mean, we'll get into how bad this Vikings pass defense really is, but
yeah,
this is scary now. I mean, I don't know about the Vikings in this spot anymore. Like, I kind of like the Rams just getting all their weapons back. It's I'm excited now. This is that news just completely changed everything for me.
And what's funny is we actually had a trade rumor. Now, here's the thing. Jack's team is the Steelers. They're always in the market for a receiver. So the way that a receiver trade is going to happen is they get linked to the Steelers, typically by a former player who boasts about his CTE. It doesn't happen, and then that receiver goes to a different market. Now we're hearing that about Cooper Kupp to the Steelers, which means that, hey, maybe if the Rams lose this game at 2-5, they throw the towel, and Kupp's a guy, okay, well, they got Puka. Maybe it's a bit of a reset for the Rams. And now we're even hearing, maybe even Stafford, he's longer in the tooth. Wouldn't he look good in a Vikings uniform? And you're thinking, what? Sam Darnold's there. He's been one of the great stories of the year. But they drafted J.J. McCarthy. He's going to be their quarterback of the future. Darnold has proven like he's a guy not unlike maybe Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith. Like, this guy's deserving of a longer look and build a team building around him for a few years to see if there's something there. He's immediately back to backup with J.J. McCarthy next year. The Rams, if they're reloading, could they do it around Darnold? This is fascinating. And I know it's very unlikely to happen, but the Rams, who all of a sudden we like in this matchup with their two weapons back on offense as the wideouts tonight, if they don't win, it just might be a fire sale.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to see that happen. You always want to see kind of big names like Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford on the move. But that trade rumor was super interesting because I feel like if it is a 1-for-1 swap, Darnold, who the Rams really seem interested in, and Stafford goes to the Vikings, I would really like to see that. I understand for the Viking side. Yes, Sam Darnold's been great this year, but like you said, J.J. McCarthy is the future. So he's just going to be the backup next season, but he's played too good to kind of, sit back. The Vikings are 5-1 and they weren't supposed to be. So if that swap, then the Vikings get Matthew Stafford and JJ. I think next year JJ would be the backup because we're seeing what happened with Anthony Richardson this year. He got injured early in his rookie year, only played 4 games, and now he's still kind of going through those rookie pains. And that's what JJ's going to have next year. If you throw him in, he hasn't played any games in the NFL. He got injured in the preseason. So now you're going to be able to let him learn from Matthew Stafford for a year, and then he'll get thrown into game action when maybe 2 years down the line when he can actually perform. He's also 20 years old. They're 21, some super young 20s. And Matt Stafford, grizzled veteran. I really like that move. And also for Sam Darnold, if he goes to the Rams, they would fully buy into him and be like, okay, you're our quarterback for the next handful of years. They'll give him a big contract. They'll give him a ton of money. So I think it would be beneficial for both sides. And also, if you're going to, the Vikings have a clear shot at making the playoffs with their start. If you get, I don't know how successful you're going to be with Sam Darnold in the playoffs come playoff time when it's a bigger stage and everything. But Matt Stafford, we've seen him do that before. So if that trade happens, it would be super beneficial for both sides.
This is where it gets nuts. And I heard the fantasy footballers talk about a great podcast about fantasy sports, but the best way for Matt Stafford to get to Minnesota, in theory, whether you want to see it or someone wants to see it, would be a great game for Sam Darnold and the Vikings win. Because let's take a look at the division. The NFC North is absolutely, without question, going to be the toughest division to get into the playoffs in because of how good all the records are. At 5-0 last week, Minnesota could be tied for last in their own division by Monday. Let's imagine a Chicago victory. Green Bay and Detroit also have 5 wins. Like, this is crazy. And so if you let's say you don't win this game, shit, like, you're fighting for your playoff life. There's not going to be 4 teams from one division getting in. I don't think we've seen it ever before. And the flip side is if you go look at the NFC West, where the Rams reside, their mark is not impressive at all at 2-4. And yet with a victory moving them to 3-4, they're within striking distance of a Seahawks team that I don't think people believe are that real. And they'd be tied with the Niners, who were the prohibitive favorites to win the division all year and may still be in some sports books. It's a really, really unique spot where a win for the Rams to get them just to 3 wins, they probably say, no. We're not selling. We're standing pat. We're just getting healthy. We got our weapons back. Meanwhile, a loss for the Vikings. And don't worry, we won 5 in a row. But no, you got to start worrying. You're tied for last potentially. This is wild.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. There's so much implications that can go into tonight because if we looked at the NFC West right there, Seahawks are playing the Bills. Okay. They could lose that game for sure.
Yeah.
The Cardinals are playing the Dolphins. Tua's back. They could for sure lose that game. And I'm not sure who the Niners play, but
Niners and Dallas, and we'll talk about it later. But those are 2 teams that need to get right. And Dallas, I believe, coming off a bye, that's not at all a 2-foot putt for the Niners, who have their own injury concerns with Ayuk. And Kittle's been dinged up a bunch. There's questions about him. McCaffrey is not going to be back. Like, the Rams could be in the driver's seat here with a dominant performance if they look like they're back on offense
pretty quick. But then if they do that, they probably don't trade Kupp. They probably don't trade Stafford. They've got all their weapons back. So I don't know. There's a lot going into tonight's game for both sides.
Let's pull up the card and take a look at all the odds for the game tonight. So the line has been sort of bouncing between 2.5 and 3 points. This is the latest from our friends at Bet Victor. It's a 2.5 point spread. It is the road Vikings favored. There's your money line numbers. Rams, that's not as big of a number as you would have thought. But once you hear Kupp and once you hear Nakua, okay, it's making more sense. And the over-under has sort of been bouncing between 48.5 and 47.5. I am going to do one thing right now, just because as we are live here and got that Puka Nakua news that he's active, I just want to see if any of these lines have moved, because this was I updated this about 30 minutes ago with Tyson, but these things do move on news like that. And I'm just refreshing and everything is still the same. So there's a lot of money coming in on the Rams because we've seen that money line number shrink and the spread from 3 to 2.5. The sharps like the Rams here.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard not to now, especially, with all their, with Nakua coming back, with Kupp coming back, but also on the other side, I mean, I don't want to burst Jack's bubble on the injury report, but Hawkinson's not coming back.
We've been waiting for him, and it's not tonight. This week. So
not
one team got the questionable turn into active, and the other side, the questionable went to inactive.
Yeah.
He at some point will be a difference maker for this offense, but it's not going to be tonight.
Yeah. There's also one other thing. I don't know if Jack has this up, but I sent it in our chat earlier. Whoever plays the Lions the next week, they get pummeled. And
that's the Detroit hangover. Have you ever been hungover in Detroit, Tyson?
Never been in Detroit, but I've been hungover. I'll tell you that. Just look at this. Teams the week after playing the Lions, they're 0-4 straight up, 0-4 against the spread, and they've been outscored 138-51.
Slaughtered, like pumped. So you're talking about less than 15 points a game, and you're talking about surrendering, like almost 40 a game, like 30 plus points. Like these are not close. These are routes. And why does that matter? Because of course the Vikings last week played Tyson, the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that was a great game. It was super close, 31-29, I believe it was. But I mean, like we said, the Detroit hangover, is it real? I mean, it looks real so far to this season. Can the Vikings be the only team to kind of overcome that? I don't know, especially with all the reinforcements that the Rams are getting back tonight.
Two more things I want to talk about. Let's go to, the coaching matchup's interesting because Kevin O'Connell worked under Sean McVay. I think that probably maybe fuels the fire of this trade speculation that we've sort of referenced. When guys have worked with each other, they can pick up the phone and talk to each other. I think they're kind of cheering for each other in other divisions in a sense. They had a great working relationship. They're running very similar offenses, clearly. I mean, O'Connell learned from McVay. They won together. That's an interesting storyline.
Yeah, I mean, this McVay coaching tree, McVay and Shanahan, their coaching trees just spray out across the entire league. So
the forest, it's not a tree anymore. It's the coaching forest.
Yeah, it seems like almost every team has a little bit of that piece of the forest, as you say. So, I mean, it should be exciting. I know that Kevin O'Connell, the way he's run this defense has been pretty tricky because he doesn't show his cards with what he does on defense. Like they'll show like cover 2 zone or whatever, then it'll be man, and you've got 2 blitzers coming in that you didn't necessarily see coming. So, I mean, he got that from, McVay. So we'll see if McVay will have an answer for that.
One thing to note, McVay, short weeks. How does he do? 6-2 in 8 Thursday nighters. That is quite impressive. So Sean McVay ain't afraid of the short week. I know it's a lot for teams to get ready. There isn't much in the way of practice time. It's a tight turn. He's thrived at it. He's also had some pretty good teams in there as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. One other note, you're talking about one of the worst run defenses per game in the Rams and one of the worst pass defenses per game in the Vikings. There are vulnerabilities here, and we'll get to your data on these positional groups against these defenses in a moment. But first, Jacko, let's get to some of the injuries, and we've already got some clarity today. Yep. So why don't we start with the fresh news?
So we'll start with the Rams. Cooper Kupp's not on the injury report. He's a full go. I expect him to be out there pretty much every snap for this offense. Puka Nacua will return. His receiving line is set at 28 yards. I just looked. So take that with what you will. I don't think he plays a ton, to be honest. They still have guys like Tutu Atwell, Tyler Johnson, Robinson that they can roll out there. Jordan Whittington, he had stepped out with the both of them out. He got injured early last game. He will not be playing.
Injured again.
And then on the defensive side, Troy Reeder and Braden Fisk, kind of borderline decent defensive players on that Rams D. Fisk is questionable. Reeder is going to be out. On the Vikings side, Tyson alluded to it. TJ Hawkinson will not be back tonight. Probably back next week, I think. And then Blake Cashman, middle linebacker, is out as well for the Vikings.
All right, Tyson, takeaways immediately from that. I know that the big news we already had, but I just you can't help but wonder if this Rams offense isn't back.
Yeah, I mean, that Nacua line kind of is tricky because that kind of screams smokescreen to me rather than he's fully back.
So walk me through that. So when you see 28.5 yards next to Nacua, he is active. What do the books know that we don't? Because, you're not going to have more info than the people that set these lines. They sort of see Nacua as, you're saying, maybe more of a decoy than an actual threat tonight?
For sure. I mean, just think about when Nacua is fully healthy. What's his line at? It's usually in the 60s.
Right.
That's what it was to start, I think, week 1 when it was him and Kupp. Kupp was in the 70s or something, but Nacua was right there in the 60s. So now to see it back at 28 in this matchup kind of makes it seem like, okay, the books don't really think that he's fully going to be, a player for this game.
That's not full go.
Yeah.
We talked about Kupp being full go. Puka Nacua's line at under 30 yards, that's not full go at all, to your point.
No, for sure. And I mean, you've seen teams do this all the time. I remember a couple years ago, and I'm sure you remember this, Keenan Allen. He was hurt, and his line was super low. He came out and he was like, hey, fantasy manager, start me. And then he was out there, but he didn't get any targets. He was like running routes, and that's kind of what I am getting from this line from Nacua. They'll line him up because you have to guard. You have to have someone on him, which will hopefully open up something for Cooper Kupp or maybe another guy on the outside, DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, whoever, but it screams smoke screen to me.
Let's go to your data. These two defenses against positional groups. There's red numbers and green numbers. Make things real simple. If something's green, you want to be playing this defense. You want to target props there. If you have fantasy, you want to start those guys. If it's red, it's going to be a tough matchup. Green means go. There's a lot of green on the dance floor here. When you look at the Rams and Vikings defenses, they are very susceptible and vulnerable to certain things, each of these two defenses.
For sure. I mean, we alluded to this earlier, this Vikings defense, and it's been good. It's been one of the best defenses in football, but I think it's more game script why they allow so much passing yards. They allow the second most at 285, allow the second most receiving yards to wide receivers, 203 per game, and 17 receptions. So I'm kind of assuming that it's because the Vikings have played so good this year that they're always leading, which forces the other team to start throwing more and more and more. And that's kind of why. But I mean, since they are throwing, they're having success doing it, with all these stats, all the green on that side. But what they're really good against is the run. Right. They've been able to shut the run down, but also that could be a byproduct of, oh, hey, we're down. We can't afford to run the ball. But 28th against the run, 72 yards per game to running backs. That's pretty good. On the Rams side of the ball, it's different.
Let me quickly jump in on Minnesota here, because 28-6 win in week one. That's you're way down if you're Danny Dimes. All you're doing is hauling the ball downfield. You're not going to try to run anymore. You're trying to play catch up. 34-7 win over Houston. Same story for CJ Stroud. It's haul the ball downfield. Jets in London, similar. Last week, a bit of a shootout. They got up early against Detroit. They started throwing the ball a little more. Like, it isn't that they're a bad pass defense. It's that teams have quit on the run against them. But they also aren't a great pass defense. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Yeah, I would say so. For sure. I mean, like I alluded to earlier, they hide their coverages so well. So that's what's been really good. And that's kind of maybe why they turn the ball over a lot, which we'll get to later. But I've been impressed with the Vikings defense, but definitely, they can get beat up in the pass game for sure.
What are you seeing from the Rams defense? Walk us through these numbers.
Well, it's polar opposites, which is funny to say. And that also might be due to their record. They're 2-4. They've had games where they've been blown out. So teams just really have to run against them, but they're having success. They allow the 5th most rushing yards to running backs, 121 per game, but also the tight ends, which is surprising because they're so good against wide receivers. They allow the 29th most receptions, the 24th most receiving yards to wide receivers, but the tight end is really where you can expose them. They allow the 3rd most receiving yards to tight ends, 67.8 per game, which would have been a great line for TJ Hawkinson had he played this game, but now he's out. So
the line is now 0 for TJ Hawkinson. So go ahead.
I'll bet the under.
Exactly. It feels like a push. I don't know why I got that sense. And you're right. They've both been in different game scripts almost all year. Minnesota's been up big late, and the Rams have had to abandon the run in a lot of these games. They've beaten San Francisco in one that they needed a wild comeback throwing the ball to get there. And then, again, I hated them against Vegas last week. It's just that Vegas is even more inept than they were. Otherwise, it's 4 losses there. They are not up late running the ball.
No, for sure. I mean, it's I'm just thinking about the line now. And I think Vegas is telling us something about the Rams. Because, why would a 5-1 team only be a 2.5-point favorite against a 2-4 team who barely tried to win against the Raiders?
And now it's 2.5. And the money line numbers continue to there's money coming in on the Rams here. There's no doubt. Tyson, Cup, Puka, Stafford. Maybe it's not full. We're back to dancing in the end zone together, but they're certainly much more dangerous than they've been since week 2, week 1, when they lost the first of those 2 guys to injury. Joe Gallant's our boy out in the East Coast. He checks in with his anytime touchdown bets every week. Couldn't join us live this week, but he loves Jordan Addison plus 160. on Bet Victor and Cooper Kupp touchdown. Welcome back. Full send plus 110 for an anytime touchdown for Cooper Kupp. Let's get into your props. A lot of green on that card. I think that probably makes our laboratory prop scientist Tyson Cole very happy. Where are we dancing?
Well, I'm excited. I mean, I didn't think that Nakua was going to be back today before I made these picks, but I still really like Cooper Kupp to go over 69.5 yards. I just checked on Bet Victor. It's actually moved down a little bit. It's 68 now, minus 118. So you're getting an even better line here. But he cleared week 1, left injured week 2. He had 21 targets and 14 receptions for 109 yards in that, 110, somewhere around there. Sorry about that. He's played the Vikings once. He had 109 receptions. What's so crazy to me is I don't think I'm being outlandish by saying Cooper Kupp is this Rams offense. But when I look this up, Cooper Kupp, after missing 4.5 games, he's still third on the team in targets. Wow. After playing a game and a half, which is wild. And he's only 7 behind the leader, which is Tutu Atwell and Colby Parkinson, which that's crazy to me. 21 of 40, Stafford's 49 pass attempts in that week 1 went to Kupp, and that Nakua was in that game for a little bit too. So Cooper Kupp is really the focal point of this offense. The Minnesota Vikings defense, they rank number 1 in zone coverage in the entire league. They run it 89% of the time, and that's probably due to all the, trickery that they do with their line. They don't really show what they're actually playing, what coverage, but it's most of the time zone. And you guessed it, Kupp destroys zone. He's caught 13 of 18 targets for 127 of his 147 yards so far this year. And that's not just this year that he's been good against zone. In his Triple Crown year, he led the league in yards versus zone, led the league in catches. He's a number 1 PFF graded wide receiver against zone in this game. I couldn't find who the slot, because Cooper Kupp normally lines up in the slot 70% of the time. Couldn't really pick who was a slot corner for the Vikings. They kind of switched some safety, some cornerbacks, but listen to these. So going back to week 2, slot receivers against the Vikings. Deebo Samuel, 110 yards. Week 3, Stephon Diggs, 94 yards. Jaden Reed, 139 yards. Garrett Wilson, 101 yards. Amon-Ra last week, 112 yards. So slot corners or slot receivers eat against this Vikings defense. And like we saw, they'll have the second most receiving yards to the wide receivers. So, I mean, I'm taking them over 69.5, obviously really comfortable at that 68 line. And hey, if you can, I laddered them up to 100 for plus 300 odds. So, I mean, look, 4 out of the last 5 weeks, the slot receivers had 100 yards. So, and the one that missed was 94. So I really like that one.
I like it. Okay, very good. Next bet is an rare under from Tyson. Jack says you don't want to live in a world of unders, but here we are. I think back-to-back weeks riding an under. Geez, settle down.
I mean, I know this is unprompted too. I mean, the first time we did it, you told me, I dare you to bet an under, and we did. Geno Smith under 1.5 passing touchdowns. That came through. It was scary at the end, but came through. And this one's even more scary. It's Kyren Williams under 18 rush attempts, minus 118. He's cleared in 4 out of 6 games. He's really been relied on in the run game, but those games were without Nakua and Kupp. Now both of them are back.
And it's against one of the best rush defenses in football.
Exactly.
I do have news for you. This line has dropped to 17.5. So you're not getting a push at 18 anymore. That's a loss. So now it's Kyren under 17.5 carries. It's minor, but your odds will also be a little better than minus 118, which we're seeing on the screen. We'll update them and push them out on Twitter. But Kyren under 17.5 kind of would make sense to me if you said, hey, by the way, Minnesota is almost impossible to run on. Like, if it's not working for the Rams, they don't have to force it with Kyren running the ball anymore. They've got Kupp and they can hit him in the receiving game.
For sure. I mean, and another thing about this, like Cooper Kupp and Nakua are back, they can be those wide receiver screen guys, which is just an elevated run game, pretty much, right? So then Kyren will kind of, take a back seat a bit. But on my sheet, the Vikings allowed the second least amount of rush attempts per game to the running back, partially due to the, game script that we were talking about earlier. But That number's 16.8. And that involves like not just the starting running back, that's like the backups and everything
Everyone.
too. So
Yeah.
it's 16 and we're getting 17.5 now. So I really like that. Another thing, Blake Corum was a nothing through the first 4 weeks. I believe he had 0% of the snaps in 3 out of those first 4 weeks. But now we're kind of seeing him get involved a little bit more. He ran 14% of the snaps, I believe, week 5 before their bye week, and then 11% last week. He had 8 carries between those 2 games, so he's starting to get more involved. So if Corum's kind of working into Kyron's workload, plus Cooper Kupp and Nakua are back, I really don't mind this under.
I don't either. And you make a good point on Blake Corum. They're not using him less. He's only getting more comfy. He is a rookie they used a draft pick on, and there was a lot of buzz about him in the preseason. Mm-hmm. I also just think if it's not working with the run, there's other ways to get Kyren Williams involved. And like he can even hit pay dirt here, which he always does, it seems. It doesn't have to be the rush attempts that get him there. It's 9 games in a row Kyren Williams has got to the house. That it is some kind of impressive that he's been able to do that on a Rams team that isn't good by record. They're 2-4, and he's still finding pay dirt every single weekend.
For sure. And I mean, when they get inside that 5, it's pretty much always just a run to Kyren. But now that you have your receiving options back, maybe they start throwing it a little bit more. And, Kyren isn't going to get 3 carries within the 5 on one.
Sure.
One
play action is an option, right?
Exactly. And I mean, in losses, Kyren is more utilized in the passing game. So, and I mean, I don't really know how this game's going to go because now they get all their weapons, the line's moving and everything, but it could definitely mean that, they need to utilize him more in the passing game rather than running it down their throats.
Last bet prop of the week. It is a interception prop. We've done okay with these, especially if you consider we got screwed by the Spencer Rattler interception that was ruled a fumble. We like Stafford to throw over a half interception. I am with you on this one. Stafford, they've been in a position where they're chasing, forcing it in. The receiving core hasn't been up to snuff, but he's also just a bit of a gunslinger sometimes, and there's been a few picks out there against him. Why do you like him to throw a pick tonight?
Well, I mean, if we're kind of following the script of, the one that you sent me earlier from NFL, thank you for that. But if we're betting under rush attempts for Kyren, we're betting over, the receiving yards for Kupp, we're expecting a lot of passes for Matthew Stafford. Right. Triple Rams props, which is weird, by the way. I'd usually like to diversify, especially with some good matchups on the Rams side.
Kind of a Vikings prop, right? They're picking them off. Yeah,
kind of. But this Vikings defense, they turn the ball over a lot. 1.83 interceptions per game so far this season. Yeah. Week 1, Daniel Jones, 2 picks. Purdy, 1 pick. Stroud, 2 picks. Love, 3 picks. Rodgers, 3 picks. And then Jared Goff, who can't even throw an incompletion right now, is the only one to not throw an interception against them, and that was last week. Not to mention, Stafford's thrown an interception in 4 out of the 6 weeks this season, and in 3 straight games. So he's not keen on, keeping the ball in his team's hands. He's not scared to throw that interception. So if we're expecting a lot of throw here, not a lot of run from this Rams team, I definitely like the interception prop.
Okay, let's recap our 3 props of the week. Cooper Kupp, over 68 receiving yards. That is minus 118 at BetVictor. Kyren Williams, under 17.5 rushing attempts. That is minus 120. And Matthew Stafford, over a half interception. That minus 118. Those are the updated numbers. I know that doesn't match what's on your screen. Those were from, only dozens of minutes ago, but that's what happens when you have Puka Nakua activated and the money starts coming into Vegas in different spots. Should be a fun one tonight. What is saving Sunday or Monday for you, Tyson? What's got you all wound up for the NFL weekend?
There's so many good matchups. It's kind of hard to pick just one here, but I mean, it kind of have some implications for this division that we're going with the Rams. I mean, I really like this Buffalo Bills Seattle Seahawks matchup coming up in Seattle, afternoon game on Sunday. It's a big week for both teams. We'll see how Amari Cooper kind of gets acclimated with with his new team. He had Keon Coleman help him, tell him what to run on his touchdown throw. But I'm expecting him to get much more acclimated in this offense. But also, it's a big game for the Seahawks. Like we saw earlier, they're leading the division. Can they keep that up? I mean, we'll see. It should be a great game. It's only 3-point spread as of now, so Vegas is expecting it to be pretty tight.
Jack, what do you got your eye on this weekend? What's saving Sunday?
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, the return of Tua. I am excited to see this offense actually look like a legitimate offense again. They've been so horrible the past however many weeks, 4 or 5. What's it been?
Yeah.
They couldn't move the ball. They have so many talented playmakers. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Achane, Mostert. We saw it last year. They put up, 70 on your Broncos, Tyson?
Had to bring that up. Jeez. But I'm with you. Yeah, that's a fun one because I want to see if they're back.
Yeah, and then on the Cards on the other side, they're not.
I don't know why you had to throw that shot at me. Whatever.
You were wearing the sweater. I had to bring it up. The
Did that last week.
I know. Cardinals on the other side, they're not dead by any means either. They're 3-4 in that kind of gross NFC West division. Big win last week, so that's what's got me going for Sunday.
Fellas, I like drama. I like hot seats. I see a trouble bowl brewing. It is Sunday Night Football. It is the injury plague, still waiting for their star running back, San Francisco 49ers, who choked a few wins away and turned them into losses against I'm the owner and the GM. Everything's fine / I'll move to a new radio station if you ask me hard questions anymore. Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. Life is going to be miserable for one of those two teams on Monday. Dallas, San Fran, prime time. Buckle up. Pain incoming for one of those two teams. That's what I got on Sunday.
I mean, that's a great matchup. I can't wait. I mean, 3-3 Cowboys coming off a bye. They're usually really good coming off a bye. Niners need this win too. If they could be tied for last in the division if the Rams win tonight and they lose against the Cowboys. Who would have thought that? So that's exciting. Oh.
Now, you had noted some Baltimore picks later in the program. There's something you wanted to key in on. It's your last Hail Mary of the program.
It was Njoku.
It was Njoku playing against you because you're right. Baltimore has been tight ends have feasted against their D, right?
Yep, they allow the second most receiving yards to tight ends. I just want to see what the prop is at for Njoku right now on Bet Victor, but I'm pretty much blindly going to take it just due to the matchup, due to the gunslinger Winston being back. We saw what he looked like with Njoku. With Flacco last year. He had a really good, resurgence week last week. So he's going to be the number one option in this offense. So I am looking forward to it. He's at 52.5, which is higher than I thought it would be, but I mean, what did you said he had 100 yards last week?
He was great.
100 yards, touchdown. Yeah, he was.
And again, no Cooper. Like, he is their best pass receiving option now. Like, he just is. And he was great down the stretch with anyone not named Sean Watson last year or post-injury. I like that too. I might even go over infinity on Njoku. I don't need to see the number. I'm blindly going over. I'll take over on 50 and change.
Also, he's in some trade rumors right now. There's the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Colts, I believe, that are all interested in Njoku. So what better way to kind of boost his trade value than highlighting him in such a good matchup against the Ravens? Tyson,
can't wait. I got a sneaky feeling we got a gem on our hands tonight. Vikings and Rams. We're not that far away. It is the 8:15 Eastern, 5:15 Pacific, 6:15 here in the perfect sports viewing time zone of the Mountain time zone. Enjoy it. Have fun, fellas. It's been a good one. We'll see if we can't hang another 3 for 3 week. Cup over 68 receiving yards. Kyron under 17.5 rush attempts. Stafford over a half interception. Thanks for being with us. We'll chat next week. This has been Saving Thursday, presented by BetVictor.